Would you like to come inside with me? The driver looked at me as if he'd been invited to enter a tomb. He muttered something about hants. What?
Hants. You know, raw head and bloody bones.
Haunts, I thought. Ghosts. Wait then. He got out of the cab and opened the door for me, and I started along what had once been a brick driveway. Wide enough for 2 carriages to pass, it curved in front of the house before returning to the road. The drive was broken through and uneven, where tree roots had forced themselves under the bricks and pushed them up, a good 12 inches in places. Weeds and briars as high as my knees grew in the cracks. I should have worn sensible shoes instead of my good slippers, but I'd a notion, a ludicrous one as it turned out, that I should arrive properly dressed. After all, I had wanted to make a good impression. But on whom? On the haunts that flitted behind the broken windows? A brick crumbled under my foot, and I stumbled, righting myself and glancing back at the taxicab driver. He was slouched against the car, arms folded, watching, and he waved me on.
Room over there on the right. That's where they found him. She was murdered cemetery dead.
He seemed to be amused at me, but whether that was because his passenger was a white woman or a northerner or a fool wasn't clear. I'd encountered Negro porters and draymen all my life, but I'd never known any colored men personally, never thought about them really until today, when I'd arrived in Mississippi in the wake of my aunt's murder and seen so many black faces. I'd never thought about Mississippi either until a week ago, when the telegram arrived summoning me from Denver to settle the estate of an aunt I hadn't known existed. There was a time when getting away unexpectedly would have meant canceling a dozen social engagements, but that was before my divorce 6 months ago. Now, I was at loose ends, ignored by former friends, and with only a few business responsibilities. I continued down the pathway and climbed the ladder to the porch, then tried the massive front door. It didn't occur to me to knock at that crumbling house, but the door didn't open. It was locked or boarded shut. I'd read once that southern mansions didn't have keys to the front door because guests were welcome day and night. Besides, there was always a servant or slave to answer a knock. Avoca was not one of them. Not now, at any rate. There was no way to force the door. A cannonball wouldn't have broken it down, although something had broken the fanlight overhead, as well as the leaded glass side lights that flanked the door. The openings weren't large enough for me to slip through, which was a relief. There were enormous French doors on either side of the main entrance, each set centered between 2 pillars. The doors that led to the room on the right were open slightly. A tattered drapery had caught in them and prevented them from being closed securely. With some reluctance, for I felt like an intruder, although I had as much right to be there as anyone, more in fact, I walked across the porch. I tiptoed, but the sounds of my shoes reverberated on the boards, which gave a little, making me wonder if they would hold my weight or break, sending me through the floor into the foundation. But they held, and I reached the room without mishap, pushed open the door, and peered into the darkness, wishing for a torch or even a candle. Of course I hadn't thought of either, since I had expected the house to be habitable, with someone there to welcome me. Perhaps it was just as well there was no light, because I didn't care to explore the old house at night, nor by day either. At least not alone. It wasn't that I was fearful. David had remarked on it once, saying, "I'd bet a $4 dog you're the bravest girl in Colorado." Of course that wasn't true. Nonetheless, I didn't frighten easily. Still, I wasn't foolhardy, and thus knew it would be best to return tomorrow with someone besides a cab driver. One thing was certain. I wouldn't be spending the night at Avoca, even if someone had received the telegram with my arrival date and was expecting me.